Hello and welcome all back to The Vault for Vault Talk. This is the show where we are recapping the Fallout on Prime TV show. And I'm here with a few of my Fallout friends from the Fallout feed. We have with us tonight Andrew.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew. And also Ray.
Hello, hello.
And Will.
Hi, Jess, everyone.
Hi. And I am, of course, Jessica Starr. We are so happy you're joining us again here. You might notice we actually have a little perk in our step, a little bounce in our bottoms tonight because we are not recording after the show for once. We had decided to take the plunge and record on a separate night to bring you this episode.
Oh, I thought it was because we'd all eaten ass turkey.
Ass turkey and coffee. You got to wash it down with something.
It ain't gonna make itself fun.
It ain't gonna. Got to work at it. So, y'all, we are talking about episode 4, The Ghouls. And I'm just going to quickly run down a summary before we go through and do our recap. There are a couple possible discussion topics tonight, too, so this one could be a little bit in depth. But here's the summary. In Vault 33, Norm becomes suspicious after an exchange with a captive raider. He and Chet explore Vault 32, discovering that its residents died 2 years prior as a consequence of infighting, and that someone used his deceased mother Rosa's Pip-Boy to let the raiders in. The ghoul encounters his friend, Roger, a ghoul on the brink of going feral. He kills Roger and cannibalizes him in front of Lucy. The ghoul takes Lucy to an abandoned supermarket. He trades her to a gang of organ harvesters for replacement chems, but collapses before the trade is complete. About to be cut open, Lucy fights back and frees the captive ghouls held by the harvesters. Ooh, they're a little more like Beavis and Butthead, but we'll get to that. The feral ghouls attack her and the gang, and Lucy is forced to kill for the first time. She leaves, but not before giving the ghoul the chems he needs. So that is the episode summary. Before we jump into the scene by scene, what did you guys think? Did you like the episode?
We got kind of a little peek at, Vault Tech and what kind of things might be going on inside vaults other than shiny, happy people.
I liked that this was a very revealing episode. I will say, I think this was maybe my favorite episode of the series, and certainly my favorite so far. The others had done so much establishing, and I feel like this episode was one of the first where they could really just run free with a scenario. Not necessarily a monster of the week, but a situation of the week on top of our ongoing Vault Dweller story. So that was really cool. The scene opens with a nice wide shot like they do. We see a rad roach. Is this the first time we've seen a rad roach that wasn't being stomped or eaten?
Yeah, because we didn't really get a look at the one that dog meat chomped on.
Nope.
Because it was dark. We just heard the sounds.
Just a little glowing rad roach guts while he tore into it. So you get that view and you get them walking. One thing I learned on Reddit that I didn't catch the first time I saw it, and I'm wondering if any of you caught this, but this last viewing, which I think was my third time seeing this one, when they're walking in the beginning with the overhead shot down on them, there are stars. There are stars in the road beneath them. Did anyone catch that?
No.
I think it's supposed to represent the Hollywood Walk of Stars, or stars on a road near Hollywood.
That would kind of play into, I'm still not sold on the idea of where they're at actually. So when we were at the river, we saw the sign for Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, and that was an exit, so they could have still been a couple miles away at that point, right? Like, we don't know that they were right there, but it was just a road going to Hollywood Boulevard, so they were close-ish.
The Hollywood Walk of Fame on Hollywood Boulevard?
I'm pretty sure it is. That's where the theater is.
Grauman's Chinese Theater, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think it's, modern company's Chinese theater now.
Oh, okay.
The thing about that, though, is it large? Goes actually pretty far west till it comes near where it hits the hills. But would there be stars on the walk further west?
Potentially, it could be the entire length of Hollywood Boulevard, depending on how many stars were given out in this. So we had the Divergent, and the number of stars that would have been added to this timeline could be different. There's a lot of stars on Hollywood Boulevard currently, but Hollywood Boulevard isn't really that long.
Okay.
It's probably only, I think if it was 20 blocks long, that might be a stretch.
Oh, wow. Okay, see, when we were mapping it, the road that was labeled Hollywood Boulevard looked like it was a good 3 or 4 miles.
Yeah, well, and that would be about that many blocks.
Okay.
You figure each block is a quarter mile.
The other thing that's strange about that is, once again, with the setting, we've talked about how sometimes the cinematography, because it's so much desert and buildings disappeared, you can see these wide shots where nothing exists. And yet, the area that had the stars on it, there's just a ramshackle shack. And as they go a little bit further, they come around the bend, and then they're by a couple of larger stone buildings. And that's where they see the West Side Clinic, which I wonder if it says West Side Clinic because it's West Hollywood. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's say they're maybe around West Hollywood. We're just kind of trying to track where they're going. So that's when they hear the voice of a ghoul saying, "My name is Roger." And this doesn't make any sense to us at the time. Exactly, like a chant, like a mantra. And this catches Cooper's interest. And so they go in to this clinic a little bit nervously. And coming around, they see him through a hole in the wall. It's a cool shot. And as soon as they come around, the ghoul recognizes him. And you could think that maybe it's because he was saying his name, but it does seem like possibly been friends, possibly worked together.
Hung out in ghoul circles.
The fraternity of ghouls, maybe that's a thing to an extent, with ghouls being ostracized.
You have to imagine there was a period of time where, ghouls were really the only thing around because people hadn't started emerging from vaults to be able to start repopulating the wasteland.
Right. I mean, there were still plenty of people surviving on the surface in some areas, but probably not around the LA area for sure.
Because that's where all those bombs dropped.
Right. Most people
So
in the
everybody
area,
around there would have been ghouls.
Ghouls or dead for the most part. But he recognizes Roger and they start talking. And you realize from the twitching and they're starting to growl in between sentences that he's going feral. And he says, the way Roger puts it, he says, or was it Cooper? One of them says, "It's my time," or "Is it time?"
So you're starting to turn. Yeah, maybe.
He mentioned that he gave it a good run, that it's been 28 years since he first started showing symptoms.
Yeah, I like that actually, that they're kind of acknowledging it and that he's had a good run. 28 years. Now, this ghoul has been longer than that. Like, he remembers before he was a ghoul. And you get the feeling that he was also a pre-war ghoul from the conversation, right? Because after this 28-year comment, he talks about how Cooper's been wastelanding and fighting it off longer than almost any of them. But do you think he was a pre-war ghoul? The way that they start talking about, you remember how food used to taste?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't think there are any like post-war ghouls. Nobody was born after the bombs that then turned into ghouls.
This is a big Fallout lore question then, because there are lots of ghouls that ghoulified post-war, I thought.
Yeah, wouldn't you become ghoulified just by drinking irradiated water and stuff?
Being exposed a lot? Like, I thought that happened to a number of people.
Well, and because even later in this episode, we'll get to it, Cooper, or the ghoul, it's talking to Lucy. It's like, "You're going to be just like me," right? Mm-hmm. And then of course, at the end, she says, "I may end up looking like you." Right.
And I mean, she doesn't know anything at this point. This is all her first exposure. Right. They're not even really called ghouls to her at this point yet.
I think probably one of the most important things we learned from the scene is that there is a method from fending off turning feral.
Right.
Like we see all the empty vials around the ground. So it's sort of like hammering home that concept to Lucy that Coop has a weakness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Cooper has a weakness, but also all the vials there, you can tell that Roger has been taking them. Because you see 4 or 5 cracked vials there. Yeah. And unless he's been here for a long time, he was trying to take a bunch to stave off going feral. Yeah, this is a whole new thing in lore that we haven't seen before. And it actually caused some real conversation. I think it's a cool concept that when a ghoul starts going feral, because you don't know when and if they will. Like, some ghouls just keep going forever and they haven't shown signs yet. Others eventually turn, some quicker than others. But the idea of something to stave it off is new. And so my thought on that is that it's maybe a local discovery, local remedy. You know what I mean? We're going to meet some of the people who can create it a little ways down the road. Whether it's a chem or how it's synthesized, we don't know. But does it like totally change ghoul lore forever? Do you think that it was bizarre to have this here and not previously in any of the games?
I thought it was a little weird, but just because it was new, but it seems to maybe make sense. It's not like it's lore breaking, except for the only thing that I wonder about is we assume Cooper Howard, or the ghoul, we know he's from pre-war. Like, how quickly did they get this drug working to that?
I think it's two different things. So I think personally, because they really don't get into this that much, that it's not what all ghouls take to go from feral. That would be ridiculous because we've played years and years of games with no indication or nothing like that whatsoever. This is a thing that has been discovered that once a ghoul starts going feral, can push it off. So like ghouls we see that aren't feral, aren't going feral, they certainly don't need anything like it. Ghouls who haven't had it, they just go feral like normal. And I'm thinking maybe it's a West Coast discovery. Like instances of that we've seen in other games. Like we have Rad Shield in Fallout 76. You don't see Rad Shield in any other game. You know, a slightly more effective version of Rad-X that'll keep you from getting irradiated, made with local plants. You see like Ware's Brew in Far Harbor, is it? And that is a local concoction too that you don't see elsewhere in the game. So I'm feeling like it's probably a local thing they've discovered that maybe hasn't spread. It also is 9 years after Fallout 4, so maybe there's been new discoveries, but they've been taking a lot longer than that, at least here on the West Coast, right?
Yeah. Well, Roger talks about it being almost 30 years. So
yeah.
I think it fits. It's, because we have the ghouls in Croup Manor, the terminals there. They talk about how they're trying to find a way to not become feral, but it was a lost cause, and everybody one by one turned feral.
I wonder if it's one of the things they thought of for the show, that when Todd or others have talked about it, they're like, oh, they thought of some things we never thought of before that are pretty great. And so I'm feeling like it's either this that he was talking about or the power armor visors flipping up, even though people don't like that. I think that's pretty useful.
It makes me wonder if it's an iodine solution. If Lucy drank that solution before she drank the irradiated water, if that would prevent her, like, will it prevent progression of ghoulification or slow it down, shall we say? Probably not prevent, but slow the rate.
And yet, ghouls are healed by rats.
That's interesting too. Yeah.
Well, they already have Rad-X, so, right?
Would Lucy prevent her turning into a ghoul if she took that same solution before she drank the irradiated water and ate irradiated food, etc.?
She could take rat away.
Right. And it does seem to be genetic, like how some people become ghoulified and some don't. Or like the children of Adam, some people are born rad resistant.
Yeah, there's a bag of rat away.
Yeah.
The Super Duper Mart.
Okay.
It was on the table.
Nice. So they've got all those chems there with rat away. But I just think it's an interesting concoction they could use in the games later for sure.
You think they're going to... Oh, that's interesting. It's like art begets life begets art itself. So it's a TV show about a video game, but we're going to get video games that are going to have aspects of the TV show in it later. That's funny.
Yeah, if it's all canon, it all kind of feeds into itself. But Cooper starts reminiscing with Roger to calm him down, to give him a second to think before they were ghoulified what food used to taste like, which also goes to show, okay, maybe ghouls can't really taste the same when they eat anything, if they even do eat, which varies.
Does that mean they can't taste or that there's no food around?
I think that they can't taste more than nothing.
Okay.
Because you can still find Blamco mac and cheese.
I know, but I thought he was implying that, all we have is this.
He was reminiscing fondly about Blamco, and then he mentions apple pie with ice cream, which, I mean, hell yeah, we all love that. And so Roger's remembering, gets excited, he turns to Lucy and he's like, my mama used to. And that's when Cooper blows his brains out.
Oh.
You gotta shoot him in the head. Of course, Lucy is totally shocked because she did not see this coming. And I don't think she, at this point, really understands that he was going feral, just that he was acting bizarre.
Well, he was barking and stuff. He was...
She had to realize there was something wrong.
Yeah, she wasn't right.
And Roger also sort of warned them a little bit. He was like, y'all might want to clear out here in a little bit, especially.
I was happy he called her a smooth skin, too. He's like, smoothies can be so unkind. Yeah, smoothies can be so unkind. And then he's like, well, you got a smoothie now, too. Like, he was out of it, but he seemed like a cool character. I liked him. But it was obviously a mercy killing. Lucy, of course, she's not in a state to realize that. I mean, she's been captured and harassed and hurt by this guy. So she doesn't necessarily see it as the mercy killing it is at first. But he immediately jumps on and starts going through his pockets and looking for choice bits. And she's like, I know life is rough out here, but you don't need to do that. And he, of course, is just going for it. And then he starts cutting off a bit and talking about cannibalism, which was, okay, here was my thought at the time. When he started slicing into him and taking out a choice bit, I thought he was going for a specific organ, like around the kidneys or some kind of like gland in the back. I mean, I'm not an anatomy. But I thought he was specifically digging for some organs that he could eat that would be like whatever drug that they have synthesized. Because when first watching this, and we're going to get to where they see all the ghouls captured later, I thought they were synthesizing the drug from other ghouls or from people, like harvesting their organs and doing that. But
interesting.
I don't know, because we never really see how the drug's made. And so it's probably not that, but that's what I thought when I first watched it.
Huh. That's
anyway,
a cool theory.
She starts trying to talk him out of it while he's cutting.
He's got the classic line. Sometimes a fella's got to eat a fella.
Wasteland survival of the fittest.
And also, man, he's just loaded with fucking great one-liners, the ghoul. Right after sometimes a fella's got to eat a fella, he fires back with... He gives her the knife because, like you said, Jess, she was asking him questions or whatever, and they turned on her all of a sudden. It was like, why am I doing all the work? And hands her the knife. And he's like, ass jerky don't make itself. You got to get in there and get the work done, right? Yeah. If you want to eat, you gotta carve. You got to do the carving, man. He's loaded with good one-liners.
Also, he took calling back to when Maximus sold his tooth. That's the first thing he did with Roger there, is he extracted one of his, what it is with the teeth in the Wasteland.
I didn't really get that.
One? Why not get all, I don't know how many ever he has left. Why not get all 7 left?
It's almost like he was just pulling the one tooth to look at it. I mean, I don't know if you can tell someone's health from their teeth.
Oh, I don't know. But one more thing is when he's first doing it and he's cutting into his back and stuff, Lucy yells at him to stop, and the ghoul looks at her quick and he's like, "What'd you say your name was?"
Yes.
And she's Lucy McLean. Why? And he's like, and recognition in his head. It's like, McLean, huh?
Yeah, he actually turns around and look at her. McLean, you say. Yeah, but he doesn't answer the question. He's turning the tables. He shares his cannibal perk card with her, and he's like, "Get to cutting." And of course, this is yet another horrible thing she's had to do. I mean, we've seen Lucy go through so much. Using the Ripper on Wilzig, everything out. Like, she's only a couple days out of the vault. And she's diced and sliced every part of the human body at this point.
If anybody out there has not yet seen Jess's fun new video she made about ass jerky, please see our Facebook group for some good times.
Glad you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, those facial expressions were priceless.
Yeah, but she tries to lecture him a little bit right there too, like talking about the hardships that they've even endured in the vault. Talked about one time there was a famine or something, and her dad went down to 128 pounds, and
her mother died. Yeah,
and then that's when Coop fires back with, "There's what they say they did and what they actually did."
Do you feel like there's so much exposition in this scene? Now that we're talking through it, we're getting so much. We're getting stuff about Lucy and McLean and him somehow knowing that. We're getting the exposition about the way he's survived. We're getting stuff about this famine, which seems incidental at the time, but is going to play into stuff later. Will, do you guys have anything else on this scene before we move on?
No, I think that covers, but you're right. They did reveal a lot of tidbit information in this scene. It was cool.
Yes, I think what they're setting up maybe sort of in this whole thing is at the beginning of this, the ghoul has this thought of her just being super naive, which she is. She's out the vault. But he's almost like through the first 2/3 of the episode, he's like teaching her the way it is in the Wasteland, what you got to do to survive. And it's sort of showing what he did, how he became, like, because he transitioned from being this really, really good person. As we get later on towards the end of the episode, it sort of, we can talk about it then, but it sort of turns a table on it a little bit, and he has some introspection, which is maybe, I don't have to necessarily be this way. I could learn something from her too.
I don't know that he actually learns any lessons there, but definitely there's some introspection, and he really is trying to teach her. If you look at not just this episode, but previous too, initially he might have just captured her. You know what I mean? Been done with it. I don't feel, as much as he's in it for the love of the game, I don't feel like he just kills wantonly all the time. He does some, and certainly for the job, he has no remorse about it.
Right.
But when his drugs got busted and when he lost all his medicine, as Ray pointed out last time, he's angry. He's angry at her. He blames her, and he's doing what he's going to do this episode because of that. I don't think he would have necessarily taken her to the market where they're going without that. But so, beyond that, he's definitely teaching her the hard Wasteland lessons.
And we don't know about it quite yet, I don't think, but there's some connection about him refusing to kill people in his movies when he was a human, and now his almost joy of playing the game. Yeah, there's some fun juxtaposition going on there too.
Definitely a character arc. So speaking of changing from naive to not so much, we're back in the vault. And there's an election going on. And do you guys remember these two other on the council's name? Reg and the other guy?
Woody.
Reg and Woody. They're putting up posters. They're running for overseer.
They're a good modern day Laurel and Hardy or something. You know what I mean? Bounce off each other with funny comments. Really, it's nice. I like them together.
I like them too. Yeah.
Who can be the sappiest and most conciliatory?
They got that vault tech through and through, that spirit. But so they're putting up the election. They're being conciliatory to each other, putting up posters, wishing each other well and good luck. Now, do we get to this point that Betty is also running, the third member of the council?
No, because we don't see her signs and nobody talks about running against Betty.
Yeah, so we know these two are running, but at this point we don't know who Betty is.
While they're congratulating each other, they're also looking in at one of the raiders.
The prisoner, right? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Woody's talking about how he tried to have a conversation with the guy and that he was really feeling like he was breaking through and talking about all this high-minded crap. And the raider told him to F off. And he's like, I think we're gonna have to take this up another time.
Yeah, let's table this for now.
Yeah, it's like we have to trank him again.
And so then the guy starts trying to chew his own arm off to get out of the cuffs. And they've got almost like a dog surgery cone around this guy's head so that he can't chew his own arm off.
He also mentions having sympathy for him because it's been 200 years. He's like, can you imagine what it's been like for them? 200 years with no contact? Like, okay, 200 years with no contact. It's almost like they think where they are here in the vault, because of the way they've been raised, that the vault is civilization. And anybody out on the surface, especially if they've been watching all the Vault Tech propaganda videos, it's a world of monsters, it's irradiated. I just thought that was kind of revealing. 200 years no contact, when just no contact with you. It doesn't mean no contact with anything else in the world.
Right.
Moving over to Norm sitting alone on a bleacher. Is he in their mezzanine where the crops are, or do we know where he is?
Yeah, I think he was overlooking the room that had the big projector that had the big sky. That room is where he was sitting.
Yeah, because they seem to have 3 or 4 major sets. You've got a couple of the interior vault room, a couple of the hallways, and then the vault itself. Okay, here's a question. Because the vaults are mirrored, are they using the same set for Vault 32 and Vault 33? They are, probably, aren't they?
I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I was just thinking about it because they look similar other than the crops and the destruction and such. So.
There wouldn't really be any need to make more than one because they are so nondescript and interchangeable.
The vault itself has got to be pretty large. There are a couple times during this show where we see a lot more people, or just you see a lot of vault activity. Security guards, different vault members, some whose names we know, some we don't, some who we haven't seen before in scenes. And we talked about it before, but I feel like the population of the vault, while a lot of vaults probably have a couple hundred people, this one might be a little bit lower because of the nature of what's going on with 31, 32, 33 sharing a population. But I feel like there's still got to be, at least before the slaughter, a good 100 or 200 at least. You know what I mean? That classic Bethesda thing where you only see so many NPCs, but you know there's got to be more.
Well, I thought I remember hearing at one point in one of the later episodes actually say it was 200.
That sounds about right for this kind of situation.
Yeah, it does sound about right, you guys. You know why that sounds about right, Ray?
Why is that, Andrew?
Because that's a vault limit. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. Maximum 200 population in a vault.
Your shelter can't have more than that.
One shelter?
Golden rule.
Which game is that canon from?
Oh, I thought all games, but of course the superior, best Fallout game, Shelter.
Is it 200 in like Fallout 4 and stuff? I thought it was 500.
A lot of them have more. Yeah, there's vaults for their testing overpopulation.
Population density ones. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, non-canon vaults.
But 500 is the limit on a few of them.
Non-canon vaults. That's great.
Yeah, unlike in Shelter. See, because we know there were only 121, 122 vaults, but in Shelter you can give it all kinds of numbers.
Sure can. There's up to 999 you can do, right?
Mm-hmm. So Betty approaches Norm, who's sitting on the bleachers, pensively. and they have a whole conversation. She brings him some pie. But what kind of pie is it? Is it rhubarb pie? It's not perfectly preserved.
No, they don't really say, and it's hard to tell. It looked like some kind of berry pie.
It looked good.
But yeah, she talks about how previously she had brought him rhubarb pie with ice cream.
Okay.
And how much that cheered him up.
And I was kind of baffled by that. I guess they would have taken a huge stock of various seeds with them into the vault. That would have been, but can you imagine prioritizing rhubarb as one of your fucking seed?
To be fair, it might have been a mix. I feel like they must have incredibly huge stores in some of these vaults to still have mac and cheese and dandy boys and fancy lads and all that years later.
Right.
But huge stores. And then, of course, they're supplementing and growing their own. But she discusses how he is processing and dealing with everything. And he asks about if she's upset about what he said in the meeting. He assumes that's why she's coming to talk to him, is because of his comments about we should do to them what they wanted to do to us in the meeting. And she goes on a nice chat where she understands how he feels, but he needs to set an example. People look up to him and his words carry more weight than he realizes, being the last McLean in the vault, because his father was overseer and Lucy left, and that holds some weight. That's kind of neat to recognize that he is thought of as not necessarily authority, but the overseer's son still, so that carries weight. But then she also goes on to talk about how it can be hard when you're angry.
This was good, the anger part.
How regular boys, they get angry about something and they just...
They pee on the wall.
What was that?
That's something about that, right? Did she say piss on the wall or something?
Yeah.
I was like, what?
But clever boys, she says clever boys, well, you should be glad you haven't seen what happens when that happens. She recognized that Norm is intelligent and clever. It also hints at a past incident they had where somebody must have caused some kind of ruckus.
Yeah, his dad, we're assuming, right?
Possibly his dad. We find out later, not this episode, we can mention it, that she was the overseer before their dad, Hank McLean. And that's one reason she's on the council, too. So she's got a lot of experience and has seen a lot.
Why would we think she's not overseer anymore then? Or how would she lose that position? I thought overseers were just always for life.
No, they're elected. That's why even the posters here, those two putting up posters for the election.
Well, I figured that, of course, of the elections and posters and stuff, because the previous one is gone.
Right.
I got the impression that they're assigned.
Yeah, it depends on the vault, I think. Right.
Because they had talked about before that, it's hard to not get too far ahead. Did she even talk about the fact that she had been?
No, that's not brought up here with her. No, we just know the other two are running that are on the council. But I was going to say, for those who play the games and stuff like that, if you look at various vaults, they had different methods of tackling who would be overseer, some of which played very much into the experiment happening in the vault. Right. Yep. You know, where elections caused trouble, or whoever was elected, they were consigned to certain fates. Like there was some awful stuff.
Elections caused trouble.
Then there are vaults like Vault 101 and Fallout 3, where Amada's father was, as far as we know, overseer for life, and it was kind of a hereditary thing, even the way that he did it. Whereas we definitely hear about elections and other vaults. So I think the more American way, the patriotic, non-commie, or monarchist way, is that they would have elections every certain number of years. Anywho, the way she talks to Norm here, I almost feel like she's half encouraging him to do something, to act on his impulses.
Yeah.
Which is why I mentioned...
Stoking flames, right?
Yeah, at the meeting last time, when they were deciding what to do with him, that there might be some manipulation behind putting him to be the one to feed the prisoners and do stuff with the prisoners too. But she was giving him opportunity should he want to follow up on those instincts. Yeah. So I feel like Betty is a little more manipulative and clever than we realize. You should see what happens when clever girls get angry. Did anyone have any other more notes on that?
Yep.
Okay. So after the scene, we go back to Lucy and Cooper. Still struggling. This is after they've left Roger. And the ghoul has ass jerky drying on his backpack. A couple chunks of meat on his backpack, which is funny. I saw that. Immediately thought, we need ass jerky backpack flair in Fallout 76.
Perfect.
But he's walking through, and she is not doing well at this point. You know,
she looks thirsty.
Very thirsty. Yeah. And not just for Cooper, like a lot of people watching. No, kidding. So they come across radiated water. And is it a bunch of tires stacked up?
auto parts. I think it was an oil pan
Okay.
off of an engine.
Not the cleanest, but it's full of irradiated water. And Cooper, he dips in his water bottle and fills it up. But of course, the water doesn't look pleasant at all, but also irradiated water wouldn't hurt him the same as others, being a ghoul.
Yeah, he like taunts it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So she finally gives in to that thirst. After he's taunting her, she finally goes in and starts drinking the gross irradiated water.
Yeah, and of course the ghoul is like, "Oh, now you get it."
Mhm.
Yeah, how does that golden rule sound now?
Yeah,
Right.
he's trying to
Yeah.
break her down.
And so you're right.
And after she drinks some and just stops and she looks up at him, and this is where she says, "What are you?" Which it's a combination of asking about what is he like a ghoul, because only ghoul she's seen so far is him. It's never been talked about what ghouls are and stuff like that. So this is where I feel like she's addressing who are you, what are you? And of course, instead of answering anything specific, he doesn't deal like that. He simply says, "I'm just you, sweetie. Give it a little time."
Just give it a little time.
Another great one-liner, right, Andrew?
He's full of them, man. He paid the writers to
Yeah.
give him some good
He's like,
zingers this
maybe it's some-
episode.
Maybe those ghouls, they have good lines because I'm thinking, oh, actually, he's not even a ghoul. But I was thinking of Nick Valentine and Fallout 4 has got a bunch of one-liners. I mean, he's a synth, not a ghoul, but yeah. But, Hancock does some things.
Hancock definitely has them too. Yeah, they're just those characters that are just too cool for school. And Cooper can really, especially with that drawl they gave him,
Yeah.
he really delivers them. It's great. But anyway, then he starts doubling over and having a coughing fit, which we saw this previously by the satellite and stuff, that he's not doing well. He's sick and maybe getting sicker. And we know he's out of his medication at this point. But of course, in the coughing fit, Lucy takes advantage of that to punt off and starts running. And she starts sprinting. Now, she's still tied up, right? She doesn't manage to get untied or anything.
Yeah,
Yes.
her wrists
So
are
not going to
tied.
get very far very fast, right?
So she's running and she comes up straight against an old crater, a block or two away. And he's coming up behind her steadily and whips out the lasso and lassos her and kind of pulls her in. And they're struggling. And he says, "You ain't going nowhere."
He didn't have just movie cowboy skills. He had legit lasso skills, right?
Yeah, we talked about that before, that he was probably a rancher or had studied a lot. But she bites off his finger in the exchange to try to get away. And of course, she doesn't escape. But that's when he has yet another great line. "There you are, you little killer." I love that because the way they showed it in the trailers leading up to this, we thought she went into some kind of house. She came out the door, and that's when he delivers the line. And when we see her, the way we see her at the end of this episode, covered in blood, having just escaped from that robot. But actually, it was here. So it's kind of neat how they do movie magic to make the trailer, to give the idea, but not give things away.
Right.
And then he cuts off her finger after she bit his.
And then
just
he's got another
teach her
great
lesson.
line.
Which was?
I think this is the first honest exchange we've had.
That's awesome. In my mind, they've had an honest exchange, but not the way he sees it. Not Wasteland justice style, eye for an eye, finger for a finger. And yeah,
Hammurabi's law, yeah.
teaching her a lesson. One thing neat about this episode is that we keep switching from like these pretty intense, sometimes gross or violent scenes back to the vault. And again, we got some surfabilly kind of music going on. A nice scene. Chet's not super. He's moping. He's eating his greens.
Not Chet. Never.
His
Yeah.
perfectly proportioned meal there. Just,
I thought you were going to say perfectly proportioned Chet,
No.
but yeah, his meal too. He's
Oh.
moping at it,
Chet ain't half bad himself, you know.
pushing it around on his plate. And the doorbell rings. And Steph is there, and she has a big old box of things. And she's just checking in. But you can tell she's checking on him. "How are you doing? How are you holding up, Chet?" And he says, "I got to admit, not well. First, losing Lucy, and then losing his job. And he just doesn't know." He had the line last episode where he said, "I don't even know who I am anymore." You can tell he's feeling kind of lost right here and vulnerable. And then he thinks about her for a second and, "Oh, how are you doing?" And he doesn't actually say, like, "With your husband dying."
it's funny. He's like, how are you handling the death of your unborn baby? The father of your unborn baby. He's all slow and awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's just that he's awkward?
Probably a little bit of that, yeah.
I feel like he is just kind of socially awkward like that. Doesn't know how to even approach it. He's had a very sheltered life. You know what I mean? Like everyone in the vault does,
Yes.
but it really comes through with Chet. He's got that farm boy feel.
It's also that thing where like he's in love with Lucy, but he knows that actually is impossible. So it's like a safe way to actually prevent yourself from being emotionally involved in something. But now that like her husband is actually dead, it's now a possibility. And Chet's like,
yeah, you think he's
AF
thinking
about that? Yeah,
because right after she mentions, "Oh, I have a box," I was going through some of Bert's things, and they reminisce about Bert, and you get the sense that their marriage was not the most passionate or intimate thing.
still loved him though, right?
Well, I think so. Talk about how he would talk about shoes until everybody left the room and
Right.
things like that. And she says, "But I really loved him." But the way she says
I
it,
loved it. Yeah,
you're like, maybe. And then she's like, "Oh, but I want you to have his shoes." And she's passing some of the stuff on to Bert and this scarf and pulls out.
Yeah, it's like some super tiny shoe.
like a size 5.
You know, he was
Obviously
a small guy.
13.
So we got from the first episode that it was an arranged marriage. She was the triannual marriage just before Lucy.
Yep.
Because she was the last name on the dress before Lucy signed it. And they show her with Bert, and he's a total dork. And she is, doing everything she can to act like she really is happy about being married to Bert.
Yeah, and one of the funniest things to me of this is when she comes in with that box and it's like, I have some of Bert's things I thought you might want or whatever, and there's that big photo of Bert in there.
Yeah, the
painting of Bert. It's like giving.
I think that's just part of just the comedy of the moment. Definitely the comedy of the moment. I gotta wonder with the box and the photo. She was
picture of Bert.
not planning on giving him everything in the box, but just like gonna go through it and offer him some stuff. But
Okay.
that was pretty hilarious. No, totally. But then she pulls out this handmade scarf and puts it on him. I thought that was sweet because you've got the whole 50s vibe that this is some of the, like, she probably knit the scarf is the idea you have. But puts it on him. And then she starts like, "Oh, you look like Bert." She doesn't say that, but you see it in her eyes. And then she goes in and she just kind of starts crying. Yeah, in her eye. And then she puts her hand on his chest and starts crying.
In her eye.
And the whole thing does feel pretty manipulative. Like, I don't think this is a natural thing. I think this was all planned. And she's crying, and then she crying over and starts looking over, and then she's like feeling the moment, and she starts putting the make on him. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, kiss him on the neck, kiss him on the cheek.
And Chet goes, "Yes, I am Bert.
I miss my husband. I want my husband back." But obviously there's more to it. And yeah, he starts making out, kissing back. And then they start getting aggressive and they're moving back towards the bed. And she pushes him down. And yes, he's liking this very much. And yeah.
My favorite part was when he started to take the sweater off and she was like, "No, keep that on."
Right. But yeah, when he says, "Yes, I am Bert." The funniest. And then we get to possibly least romantic line ever said in a film, but during a makeout session, maybe, where Chet's feeling her up and reaches down.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up.
I'll say it so you guys don't have to. So he puts
I was
his
going to
hand
leave
in,
that to y'all.
and he's like, "Whoa, that's one wet lady," referring, of course, to and just hilarious.
She is 10 and a half months pregnant at this point.
She's pretty large.
11 then.
11, 12. It's been a year. Well, you know how that works. You play shelter. It takes what, 3 days, 3 hours?
3 hours, to birth and 3 hours to grow up to an adult.
Perfect. That's how it works. Honestly, I love that about Chet. Like, it's been made fun of, and it's bad, but it just shows what a cornball sweetheart he is.
He's a cornball something.
And so, of course, she backs up, and suddenly it's sploosh. Everything is wet because her water broke. Talk about timing.
That trope of in a movie or TV showed someone dumping a bucket of water. It's a water breaking.
Yeah. But she was either putting the make on Chet because this was her opportunity, because she knew there was a situation she wanted to strike while the iron was hot, because she actually just needed someone and she likes and trusts Chet.
None of
Pardon?
the above. None of the above. She needs to get Chet so they can murder the Raiders. Right?
Yes. And maybe she's going to use Chet for that too. Yeah, but maybe she was just horned up. I mean, pregnant women can get horny sometimes.
Well, yeah, pregnant ladies especially, right?
I feel like she needed somebody and Chet was available and reliable. And so it all worked out. But then we're back to the super duper mart. This was cool because the first leaked set photos we ever saw were of the super duper mart, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the panel van out front.
Yeah. When they were walking up to it, it's Lucy and Cooper approaching the super duper mart through the parking lot. There's some sand there blowing and a few vehicles. And this is people talk about when you point at the screen, like, hey, I recognize that. But I definitely did that with this scene because we had seen it in all the promos. Very classic super duper mart with the SD up there. He goes to an intercom and he buzzes in, and a Handy voice, even there it sounds like a Mr. Handy, a robot of some kind.
Yeah.
And he says, purpose of why you're here? Does he say barter or does he say trade?
Exchange.
Maybe transaction, exchange. And he
Or
wants
transaction.
and he says 2 months of vials for conditioned female. And then he looks at her hand and the finger he removed earlier and says near mint.
Oh, that's great.
The voice seems to think that's okay, and he says condition grading. When I first saw it, I thought they said condition rating, but then listening a second time, any of you have on a closed caption for this?
I did. I had the subtitles on when I watched it this last time. And that's what he said. Yeah, the robot just says condition grading requires physical evaluation.
So it is grading.
Yeah, and I thought he
not
asked
taking
for
his word
60
for near mint.
vials.
I think he said 2 months.
He does say 2 months at the intercom later on when the robot is talking with Huey and forgot the other guy's name. He
Squirrel.
says it is 60. Squirrel, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, he said it's 60 vials in, but that's like 2 months, assuming it's one a day.
Yeah, but it's great information though, because like you're saying, Ray, we learned that because in there, the robot, they say 60 vials, and he looks at the thing and he says, yeah, we can do that. So we now know that Coop has to take a vial a day. Okay, that's what a 2 month supply would be, is 60 days. So she goes into the super duper mart. She starts to struggle, resist. He cuts her bonds, but then pulls his gun. And he tells her basically, things aren't going so well for you out here either. And he's got the gun pointed at her. So she gives in and goes into the super duper mart.
When was the last time we saw Cooper drink a vial?
It was at the satellite
Because he lost it at the river.
with the gulpers, right.
Like, no river. Yeah, you're right.
And he took a hit at the satellite there, and that's where we saw that it was mostly empty. He had a few more vials at that point, though.
Yeah.
We don't know if he took one earlier in that day at the gulper or not, or if that was even the same day, which it might have been.
I was just trying to gauge how much time has passed.
Probably 2 days, which that's not long at all. Maybe it's been longer. Not
I
sure.
have no idea.
So she goes in, and after she enters, you get back out to Coop. He's been tough and struggling here and being a boss. And this is where he starts to get woozy. You look at him, and he's been using all his strength to stand and maintain his composure and be a bastard like he is. And he just kind of collapses and falls to the ground because he needs his medicine. So we've seen it happen a bunch of different ways. We know it keeps people from going feral, but it seems to be more like he is pretty weak without it. But you also know he's got a big drug issue.
Yeah, because he hasn't had any access to drugs for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And he prides himself in his, bucket of drugs condition.
Yeah, he's a big old bucket of drugs, all right. She's in the super duper mart, and it's kind of dark. She goes in, there's like kiddie rides, your classic kind of entrance area to a store like this. And you hear the music. It's a classic kind of song. I don't know if it's been used in previous games. It reminds me, of course, of like the atomic stop music, but it reminds me of like old advertising music from 50s ads too, like a world of opportunity or something. And so she's trepidatious, and a robot approaches, kind of floats up. And of course, she is scared. But yay, we get a robot. First time we've actually talked to a robot in the whole show, because we saw the one in the first scene, in the opening scene in the kitchen. And probably this is the same Mr. Handy as there. They've just put a medical symbol on him and scarred him up a little, unless they have multiple. But I thought that was awesome. So he starts to do a bit of an interview with her, and she's bleeding a little bit. And he's like, oh, your finger's hurt. That won't do at all. Come with me. And so he takes her back. And so she's following, but she's kind of like pleading a little bit because of where she's come from, and she's scared of what's going to happen. He takes her to a medical room, a little clinical room. He starts to triage her. And so he's like checking, what's wrong with you? How long has it been since this and that? And he says, oh, here, your finger. Our finger inventory is dreadfully low. But he finds a finger that'll fit. He sews it on. He sutures it. He's like, there, how's that? And she starts to tear up because she's like, it kind of reminds me of Dorothy and Oz, where she's like, oh, Mr. Handy, you wouldn't believe how awful it's been.
First kindness she's seen, right?
Right. And she's like, Everyone's trying to kill me or hurt me. I thought he was being sold as a sex slave. He's like, dreadful no.
Oh, that'll never do.
Disgusting.
Yes. Oh, disgusting. No, I'm only going to harvest your organs.
Now be still. This won't hurt a bit.
And of course, she starts to scream, and he comes right in and injects her. Boom, she passes out. And that's the end of that scene. I love it. I love the Mr. Handy voice. I like the whole thing about how matter-of-fact he was and conciliatory, helpful.
I also like that he thought the war was maybe only a week ago.
His chronometer. Yeah.
He's like, sorry about the mess. My temporal sensors or something went out, and that must have, because of the Great War. And he's like, that must have been at least a week ago.
At least a week ago. Right.
Yeah. The fact that his programming is so off that he has no idea it's been 200 years. It's I say chronometer because that's the word that Codsworth used. But yeah, I don't know.
The old chronometer.
So no wonder poor Snip Snip is all messed up. He has actual cotton though. Yeah, it's funny. I think it's actually when she hears about the cotton that she starts to melt and says, "Oh my God, you don't know how horrible it's been." And he darts her with a syringer and knocks her out. Once again, really quick switch there on the contrast. So we're back in the vault with Norm and the prisoners. Do we focus in on the prisoners and Veronica, and then we see Norm coming in wheeling a Jello cake, right?
I got such a kick out of them giving the prisoners Jello cake. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. Of course, these people are giving them Jello cake. I was really amused by that.
Yeah. Well, and it's the cake from the party, from the wedding reception.
Where they murdered all their...
Wait, is it the same cake?
It's half eaten.
Oh, geez, maybe it was. When he comes into, I thought this was several days later, and when he comes in, I think he says dessert cart, as though they've already had dinner, and now they're getting cake for dessert. He says, hello, Veronica. That's her name, right? She's like, Jello cake? They're getting Jello cake, and she is obviously jelly. Yeah, that's my orders. He starts giving them pieces, and she's just kind of looking and salivating. And after he's given them like 3 or 4 pieces, he says, you want it? Mm-hmm. Like, I won't tell. And so she actually grabs and takes the Jello cake, wheels it off.
At that point, too, you're starting to become suspicious of the fact that he's going to poison them. And so, you're like, has he poisoned the cake? And this is how he's going to do it. But then when he lets her take it, no, he wouldn't give it to her,
right?
Knowing that it was going to kill her. That can't possibly be it.
Right, exactly. So he's handing the cake, and then one of the prisoners making a sound, and he looks through the food slot, as it were, and they start talking. And he basically says, what do you see?
And Norm is like a murderer in a cage, paying the price for what he did, paying the price for the innocent people in Vault 32.
Yeah, perfect. You wrote that down, didn't you, Will?
I did.
Oh, good. I was like trying to remember the exact wording. That's perfect. And then the raider goes, I don't know what people of Vault 32 are up to, but it was anything but innocent. Then he slides the little window shut. But this, of course, gets Norm very curious. Because he was in there briefly. He saw the grain, the crops were all dead. He saw that people were killed. He came across the one skeleton, and that's when he ran back. Like, something isn't right here. Something is up. So now he knows, wait, there's more going on than I thought. So he goes to see Chet.
Doesn't he go, he gets on the computer.
The computer first.
Yeah, and then it comes up, access denied.
Right. So he checks out intervault trades. And first it shows trades between 31 and 33. It's like a couple years ago, equipment, generators. And then there's back and forth medical supplies sent from 33 to 31 and generators the other way. And then there's something else. So there's a record of like 3 trades here. And then he goes to trades between Vault 32. And that's when it scrolls. And then you get a big ol' access denied. So this makes him even more curious. I also think it's cool to point out that the terminal showed it was hacked. If you looked at the bottom, there was an override. And so he actually hacked into that terminal to get some of the information too. Because he has computer skills. He's smart. Yeah. Was in like systems information or computer maintenance or something prior to this.
Yeah, I missed that.
So this, of course, makes him even more curious. Well, if I can't find out the information electronically, I'm going to find out in person. So he goes and grabs his buddy Chet.
Very ready to leave.
Yeah, he's more than happy to get the hell out of there.
The room's loud. There are people in there. There are like a security guard or 2. There's medical people, and a woman is having a baby on his couch.
Yeah.
I am surprised. I was surprised I didn't get her to the clinic, but no, it's happening right there. He's still wearing the scarf too, isn't he?
Yes.
So Norm says, I need to check something else.
Do you want to get out of here? And Chet
Yes.
nods quickly, yes.
Let's go. So they go and you cut to them in the entryway. Well, they go past the crops into the way to Vault 32. And then you see them digging at the wall, kind of pulling out the rubble to investigate.
Yeah, from where the bomb went off that the Raiders set off.
And there's a lot of rubble. Because if you look in the rest of the vestibule area where they are, there's a big old pile already pulled out. And Norm is handing the rubble to Chet, and Norm asks, "This isn't really fun for you, is it?" And Chet says, "I don't know why I came anyway." And Norm, insightful Norm, says, "Maybe because you're still in love with my sister and being with me reminds you of her." Insightful Norm. Yeah. We talk about him being intelligence, but he has high perception too, you know? So they dig their way through, and he clambers over the rocks, and Chet goes with him, and they find themselves in Vault 32. And this got a quick look at it with Norm. We get a much better look at it here, coming through with all the dead crops.
Sort of dark, and they're using their Pip Boys as flashlights and stuff.
And they're like the two investigators. So they immediately start finding things are very wrong. They go to like a community rec room and they see that foosball table covered in blood. And then out around the corner, there's a guy on the ground slumped who's been pierced through by a foosball rod, with blood on it. And they come across any number of scenes.
Yeah, and he goes up to that body that you're talking about with that foosball rod skewered through him, and he starts messing with his Pip Boy.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, this shows that the last biosigns were detected over 2 years ago."
Yeah.
So
2 years ago. Okay, it's different than we realized for sure. And they come across bodies that were obviously fighting. And then I think the next one they see is a charred body against a wall. And there's graffiti above it that says, "We know the truth," above the charred body there. Then they go into that room with the fork and the toaster.
Yeah. And that one there, where you're going to talk about what they were watching on TV, that the TV is still running.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, it's like some weird show about a mouse utopia.
Yeah, the mouse utopia experiment.
That they have all the food they can eat and padding to sleep on and all this stuff, but eventually overpopulation occurs and the mice begin to fight for what was once bountiful food in space, and then they start eating each other to survive. So I was wondering if that was sort of part of the experience, something in the vault, like that these people, that's all they had to watch.
Yeah, it sounds like exactly what the vault experiment was.
Yeah, I've heard that speculation, but in my mind, because we do ultimately find out how Vault 31, 32, and 33 are connected, I think it's also just kind of talking about the rats in a cage turning to cannibalism and fighting and eating each other, which is what we do see here, that they are out of food because their crops are all destroyed, and they do fight each other. So I don't know if it was simply analogous to what happened here, because they were fine for a couple hundred years with everyone else until something happened. They learned the truth, and they attacked their overseer, who we're going to see by the end of the show. And they took over, and I don't know if the crops were damaged when that happened, if they were cut off in other ways, but ultimately they ran out of food. They had no food. They had no access. They were stuck here, and they killed each other and died.
Yeah, but it's not like they had the internet. So this was a videotape that had to have been supplied by Vault Tech.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Probably all the videos they were watching in that vault were deranged in that sort of way.
I wouldn't think so, because they've had people from Vault 32 come over plenty of times in the past with 33.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They're communal vaults. I think Vault 32 was very much like 33 prior to stuff happening. I mean, it could have been slightly divergent.
Yeah, maybe just when they went crazy, they started seeking out those weird videos.
Would have had them in the vault, sure. But it's environmental storytelling, like when you're in a horror movie, there's a reason why people are watching the Killer Clown movie on the TV when you go in the room. And it's not because they always watch Killer Clown movies, it's because it made it spookier. Did they find anything else during that? Oh, you see the two of them strangling with their hands around each other's necks, right?
Yeah.
And Chet is horrified by this because Norm says they strangle each other. And Chet says, with their hands. Like, I don't know what else you'd use.
I mean, maybe Chet's a garrote guy.
Just out there garroting things.
Yeah, got his piano wire and two handles, and he's going to town.
Traditional strangulation, a good hanging. We see bodies in all kinds of situations, so it's bad. Then we go back from the vault and these revelations they have. So we don't get to finish to what they actually finish finding yet, but it drops back over to the Super Duper Mart. And Lucy is all passed out on the gurney where we last saw her, but now it's being pushed by Snip Snip down through a big room. And she's starting to come to. And she has a brief vision of her mother, just another kind of look at her mother, same as we saw before when she was talking about not really remembering her mom much, her mom and white light and all that. And she looks to the right, and you start to see there are ghouls in the cages on the right. Well, not cages, they're like old freezer.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the refrigerated section. It gives your ice cream.
There are signs on the doors. The truth is, they do more than just this drug. They are harvesting organs because you look at the signs and it says ghoul brains, 500 caps. Ghoul brains, 500 caps. You keep going down. There's one where it was crossed out and then it wrote 100 caps, like it reduced price from like 400 to 100. And then another one where I think it says ghoul organs.
Yeah. And the one where you said where it was reduced, where you see where it goes 500 and that's crossed out and it's 300 and crossed out and it's 100. That also, they added feral above that. So the feral, as it was going feral, they were dropping the price of the organs for the
I
the
didn't see that part. Okay, that's cool. Because I was wondering how they were dealing with the situation. I mean, because they were selling brains, selling organs.
Why they need ghoul organs? What's that for?
Well, this is why at the time I thought that they were harvesting for that chemical, for that medicine. But no, maybe ghouls last longer.
And not as perishable.
Yeah.
Because I'm
But-
sure the refrigeration's down.
But he's wheeling her through, and she sees all this and makes eyes on the one who's kind of muttering to herself, and a few others just looking for help. And into these two guys, Beavis and Butthead, on the couch.
Apt.
Yeah, and they're stoned out of their gourd. They're watching cartoons. They're, laughing. And he says, "Our newest arrival has arrived." The guy says, "Process her right away, so she's ready for the next pickup." Get the idea, the people coming in to pick up organs and whatever they're selling, making here regularly. Our boy Snip Snip says, "Right away, sir."
Nice robot. They're all so out of it.
Yeah, you wrote down the actual line, Andrew. "Do her now, so she's ready for the next drop off."
And we're just sort of left to wonder, what's that mean?
Yeah, very good, sir. And so he's taking her back, moving her to a back room. You go by meat case with all kinds of carved human remains. So before you saw a bunch of ghouls, now maybe actually people who aren't ghouls, maybe they do the ghouls for speciality, but whenever they get human, they're cutting them up, selling them right away. That's why we see these different body parts.
Preserved.
Yeah.
Gotta do it faster.
But so he's bringing Lucy back to the back room, and he's ready to start to process her. And
she's begging, like, "Please, I need more organs."
Yeah.
Those.
This won't hurt a bit.
That's actually how we learn how he got his name. I think. I assume this is how we got his name. He's like, "Don't be afraid, a little snip snip and it'll all be over."
So he's obviously a medical bot that's been repurposed for this purpose, and he's still going through his routine because he's just a robot. He knows his programming, so he's being polite and doing what he's told. So she manages to move out of the way enough that his saw blade actually cuts one of her bindings.
Yeah, she kicks it with her foot, and then he swings down her binding on her arm.
Is any of that Mr. Handy practical? Is that all CGI?
Oh, I thought it was probably practical.
No way.
I don't know. But so much of the stuff in the show is, like, maybe there was a practical Mr. Handy that they then added the animations to.
It looks so fucking cool, but
it looks so real to me,
Yeah, it does. I've heard her mention, though, that a lot is actually, like, real, right?
Partly because the way that they're actually fighting, and then she has him in hand, I feel like it had to at least be partly real.
I think he almost touches her, like, when she makes contact with the arm, you can kind of tell that at least that part was real because she made physical contact with something. Like, but I was just kind of wondering, I wonder if that was a broomstick.
Something that wouldn't accidentally slice the actress in half.
Yeah,
I'm sure it wasn't actually spinning. Yeah, good point. Good point. They fight, and he gets his buzz blade caught into the mattress, and she gets out, and she's running, and he's coming after her and going to attack. And that's when she reaches behind her, grabs the defibrillators, and puts it on his blade. And, he's jerking, and it's very bat stop. His routine is winding down. He ends with, "There's no fudge here," which he said earlier when she said, "Oh, fudge."
Oh, fudge, right.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, what the fudge? Yeah, it's like, what the fudge?
Curious about that. She knows what Mr. Handies are, right? They have them in her vault, correct?
Yeah.
She's seen robots before. Was it just that she was just in general surprised? It wasn't that she was surprised at the existence of a Mr. Handy.
No, she was surprised that it was going to try to
kill her.
Chop her up.
Yeah. And her surprise when she first saw it, she didn't expect to run into a Mr. Handy. She thought she was going into a bunch of slavers or raiders or something. I'm sure they have lots of robots you haven't seen, protectrons and handies and stuff. Like any vault, we know most vaults had handies. But even if not, she would have seen them on video.
Yeah, I can't remember seeing one, but that doesn't mean they haven't flashed by.
I thought we did.
In the vault?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was bright, shiny, silver. It was like in one of the very first scenes.
I know we saw one at the birthday party in the beginning. We know that there had to be handies in the vault, but so she would be somewhat familiar.
Yeah, and so it seems as though when she shocked it with that defibrillator and it went down and it said the no fudge here, it seemed like it sort of reset its system because it's very faint, but it's like, I am ready to serve or ready to serve.
So she's looking for something to help her here. It goes across all these chemicals and stuff like that because this is obviously a clinic and a chem den of sorts. And she sees the Abraxo, but it's not just Abraxo, it's Abraxo drain cleaner. So we next see her walking into the room with the two dudes who are still laughing and watching their TV. And she's got Snip Snip belted up. She's got his little syringer arm cannon in hand. And she's
robot hostage. It's so silly.
She's like, let me go or Snip Snip gets it. And they think this is the funniest damn thing they've seen.
Oh, so funny.
And they're like, yeah, okay, he's a robot. And the other one says, you might as well be holding an air conditioner hostage. Then they both agree that, but air conditioner would actually make it cool in here. It's kind of hot. That sounds nice.
Your air conditioner might be kind of nice.
She's like, I thought you might feel that way. So I filled Mr. Handy's syringer with Abraxo drain cleaner. Tell them about what Abraxo does. And the robot jumps into an ad. Abraxo, blah, 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 blah. Also very poisonous.
Very poisonous. Yeah.
So they're not even going to fight. They're not even going to fight. Okay, this sucks. I've got my buzz on. I don't want to deal with this shit. Fine, you can go. And she's like, not just me, them too. Gesturing back to the ghouls. And they actually pretty quickly look at each other like, okay. And so they hit a button and a bunch of the doors open. And you see the ghouls looking and like, oh my God, the doors are open. And some of them stumbling, some of them jumping right out. Most of them rush off, various ghouls. You see the one all the way down coming out. And then the last one, this dude in a suit with long hair. And he's just like, thank you. Like he's so happy.
Hey, thanks, man.
Yeah. And runs off. And this is a feel-good moment. Lucy's out there making things better. And Lucy is actually really happy. She smiles. You can see that she's like, okay, this is great. I'm actually doing something good. And then she realizes, she sees Martha there. And she's like, I said all of them. And they're like, oh, lady, you don't know.
Lady, you don't understand, man.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, all of them.
Well, she shoots a syringer into the
It melts, right?
Yeah, it starts melting and bubbling, all green, acidic, and stuff like that. So they look at that, and all of a sudden they're pretty terrified of Lucy.
What happened after that, Will? The goddamn couch turned into a bloat fly. It was awesome.
Bloat fly syringer, that would be great.
I'm still surprised they didn't protest more.
Yeah, me too. I'm just thinking they were just so stoned. They're like, yeah, whatever, dude.
And I think they were probably hoping that the ghouls would attack her first.
Yeah,
right. But they gave in. They pushed the button. And the ghouls come out. And you're free to go. Go. And that's when you realize, wait, these ghouls are slavering. They are very feral.
Barking and doing that same shit Roger was doing, right?
Yeah, we didn't see the ones on the left when she first came in. We saw Martha, but we didn't see the truly already fully feral ones. So they come out. They come in to attack. She pushes Snip Snip away and jumps hard to the left. And so they go running by her and the robot and start to jump on the guys who pull out guns. Like they get up, they're now in fight or flight mode, and they grab guns that they have and they start shooting. But it's too late. Like they take a ghoul out, then a ghoul takes one of them out, then the other one takes another ghoul. But in shooting, the third ghoul hears the noise, jumps, pounces on him, and he managed to kill the ghoul as it kills him. So at this point, 3 ghouls and 2 guys are dead.
But still there's Martha.
Yeah, so she comes out and Martha is coming out twitching and saying, my name is Martha, but then also rawr, fighting off turning feral, much like Roger, but even worse.
Yeah.
And
that grounding practice of saying your own name.
And so Lucy's trying to connect with her even for a little bit at first. So that's right. You're Martha. Yeah. And just, it's okay. Trying to bring some sense into it. Yeah.
And then Lucy says, why did you say that name? That was my mother's name. No. the connection doesn't quite work. And Martha is going fully feral and just kind of runs for her and jumps on her. During this exchange, she sees a 10 millimeter by her foot. So she falls back on purpose. She grabs the 10 millimeter and shoots Martha while she's in the air, doing the ghoul attack.
Mentioned the fucking awesome ass weapon design, how fucking incredible the 10 millimeter hand weapon.
A lot of them are great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was perfectly designed like the game, and it was ridiculously large.
Overly sized.
For a pistol.
Yeah.
Which is very much like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Everything is a little more size to it. It looks just like the game. And I mean, the ghoul's gun, his little sawed-off shotgun exploded pistol thing, and the rifle, the weapons are really, really good.
Yeah, I want the ghoul's gun in the game. It's not just a sawed-off shotgun. There's something weird about that fucking gun. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it shoots projectiles.
it's like cool explosive slugs, like but extra large.
Yeah.
He's got a variety in his bandolier of different kinds of that he can put in it.
Oh, so it's like the green arrow with a sawed-off shotgun or something.
He installed the gun runner's arsenal, you know.
Yeah, but it's taken a little bit more from Fallout New Vegas, I guess, right?
Yeah,
with the different ammos and stuff.
because GRA had a bunch of different ammo you could use for a lot of them. Yeah, so she kills Martha, and she struggles up, and she looks around at the carnage. First time she's killed somebody, I think, that we see.
Yes.
I mean, she's made ass jerky. She cut off a head.
But they were dead first.
So, wow, what a scene. But she knows that the medicine here in the vials is what the ghoul was after because they were going to trade for. So she picks up some of that. She grabs a few supplies while she's in here. And she stumbles out of the door, kind of emerging out. And you can see she's bloody. She's beaten up from it. And this is the scene, once again, that we saw in the trailer where he said, "There you are, my little killer." But in this case, Cooper is still on the ground. He's awake. He's there. But he's not really mobile at the moment. He's moving slightly. You can tell he's
face down on the ground. I can barely.
Yeah, looking to the left. You see him breathing and his eyes moving a little. She comes up to him and she asks, the question, because now she understands a bit more about ghouls and feral ghouls. Even I still don't know if they said the word ghoul yet, but we saw ghouls, written on the door, so maybe she got it at this point.
We keep using the term. Have they not said the word ghoul?
Well, she might not know it.
Not around her, they haven't. Yeah.
But
they have.
In the show, have they used that term?
Definitely. It was written on the doors, too, with the ghoul brain 500 caps.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but she doesn't know them as ghouls for sure, because when she's talking with Snip Snip, she's like, that creature. Outside is kidnap me and do all this stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that she didn't know the term. I thought she was just making a point about saying how he is uncivilized by calling him a creature.
A bit of both, but honestly, she managed to escape him. She might have heard the word once or twice, but hasn't put it all together.
Some stuff about the surface in the vault, right? How could they not know the existence of ghouls?
They only know Vault-Tec propaganda, especially in this vault.
Interesting.
All the people in the vault, they don't know anyone's even gone to the surface successfully. They just know the semi-annual report of, hey, radiation levels outside are getting low enough that Monty and Lucy's kids might be able to actually go outside,
Right. I remember that point.
And as you know, most Vault-Tec propaganda, we've all seen the videos in the radiated wasteland, and they show the creatures and people killing each other and like silhouettes of like Yao Guai and Deathclaws, which of course they wouldn't know about them ahead, but whatever.
How did they? Yeah, good predictions, guys. Planned it, huh?
So accurate. But she says, so if you don't get this, do you turn into them? And he can't really speak much, but he just faintly nods and his eyes look, and so she drops the vials for him.
Yeah,
like, okay.
she kneels over him at first, and she looks at her 10 millimeter. Not that she's going to, but it's almost like she's presenting the option or weighing that that's an option that she could do to him, but she doesn't, shoot him. Like you said, she drops the vials.
Yeah, after all this, that is a very telling scene, the way she looks at the gun and at him, because he's vulnerable here. She could absolutely kill him, and maybe save a bit of grief if she did too, to be honest. But she doesn't. She drops the vials. And it says there, golden rule, mother fluffer.
Yeah, where she's like, I may end up looking like you, but I'll never be like you. And then that's it. And I thought it was funny too when she says that, golden rule, motherfucker, because that's the first time I think she's cursed, right? Because she, even when she saw Snip Snip and coming in, it was,
fudge.
What the fudge? But this time, when she comes out of that whole super duper march, she's a changed person, because she's the vault
killed.
Suit is around her waist tied up, and she's all bloody, and she looks battle hardened, and she has sort of come around, like, understood a little bit what the
Yeah.
ghoul was
Well,
saying.
she's got a kill under her belt, and she's upgraded her weaponry. Yeah. So she's stepping up her Wasteland game,
She leveled up.
I was about to say she leveled up.
Perk unlocked.
Oh, that's
Curse
good.
words.
Yeah.
Right on. Gunslinger level 1.
Yeah. And she starts walking off. It's funny because remembering the episode ahead, I thought this was the final scene, was her dropping the vials and walking off.
Yeah, me too.
And we actually skipped a scene already, but we can go back to it whenever.
Oh, yeah. Back to the vault with Chet and Norm. I went right to her exiting the vault already, didn't I?
Okay, because it switches right after she kills Martha.
Yeah, it cuts back to Chet and Norm. So they're still investigating Vault 32. And they're going through these dark hallways with their little Pip-Boy flashlights. And we see bodies on meat hooks. And they cut through under the door, under the vault door, into the overseer's office. And up there's scrawled in graffiti on the left side, "Death to Management." And the overseer is tied to his chair, wrapped up. There's a bunch of stuff on his desk, some glue, and taped with wire, or is it duct tape?
It didn't look like duct tape. It looked like actually almost like leather strips.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
thinking it was like belts or something.
Yeah. But they tied him up so that he had an arm across his chest, and they wrapped his thumb up.
I've tried to look at that. I didn't get that. I was wondering, what are they doing with his arm? Are they like trying to have him stab himself with a knife or something? But okay, the thumbs up, that makes sense.
Wow. Oh, I didn't catch that either, Ray. That he was strapped with a thumbs up. That is just how macabre. Like, what a great way to signify the whole "we don't trust Vault Tech anymore" and all this propaganda you've been feeding us. So this is where Chet says, "It's safe to say they went bananas. We know what happened here. They went bananas. I don't want to know more than that. Take me home. I don't care if there's a screaming woman and a baby coming on my couch. I've had enough of this place." I mean, he doesn't say that, but that's what you get from him. And Norm says that still doesn't explain how they got in. So he gets over to the overseer's computer and uses his master hacking skills. He's got science of at least 2, I would say, expert hacking, and gets into the overseer's terminal. And he finds a terminal log that says the vault was open. So Chet assumes that they had to let the raiders in. And Norm says, no, it was open from the outside. And he's checking the vault logs. And he finds the Pip-Boy.
That's impossible. It has to be.
Yeah, they would have had to have a
Pip-Boy.
And it turns out they did. So he checks the logs, and there's a name on the Pip-Boy.
What's
Rose McLean. That's
Bob. Ba-ba-ba.
third time we've heard the name this episode. We've got Lucy says her name, Lucy McLean, and the ghoul seems to recognize it. Betty, the overseer, says to Norm, "You're a McLean, that carries weight around here." And now we see Rose McLean, her mother Rose, which great name. Her Pip-Boy was used to access the vault. How would they get it? Why? They don't know, but that's how they got in.
Did she end up being a robot in Fallout 76?
Yes, Rose the Raider Rovent was her mother.
It is her. Except that Rose was, what was that Rose's name? Roseanne?
Rosalind Jeffries.
Rosalind. Yeah, there we go.
Rosalind Jeffries was her original name. And she had a killer mohawk. But yeah, so this is just boggling the mind. Like, how did they get out? And at this point, we're all connecting things. Like, how did the not overseer, who was actually a raider, Moldaver, get in the vault, used Rose's Pip-Boy, seemed to recognize them, and then Hank recognized her? Did she come from the vault? We had those questions at the time. Now we have even more so. How did she steal Rose's Pip-Boy and get it out of the vault? But we don't get any of those answers right now. We don't actually see them return, though, right? We just know that they're heading back.
Right.
This is when we get to the Super Duper Mart and everything we talked about already,
Yeah.
where she says, "Golden roll, mother fluffer," and walks off. Then after she leaves, we cut to Coop, and he struggles up and into the doors of Super Duper Mart after having taken his vials and have to get functional again. And he's walking in, and he sees the room and the empty things, and he's seeing everything that happened in there, and he's recognizing what she did, what she went through. And he sees the bodies, and he sees drugs and the TV. Hell yeah. He makes his way to the couch. He takes some of it right there, takes a little bit more of
taking
it.
all sorts of stuff though. Like first he does the vial shot the way he usually with the inhaler.
Mhm.
And then he's like, is that vodka or is that water that
Yeah, it looks like vodka.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
thinking it was vodka. He's chugging the vodka, and then as he approaches the sofa, there's like some kind of powdery substance on a piece of paper, and he starts just eating that as much as he can, and then takes some other kind of syringe, whatever it is, and he's squirting that, whatever that is, in his mouth. He's
Woo!
throwing everything in.
refilling the bucket.
Yeah.
The bucket needs topped off. You get the feeling this is how he's existed so long. He's got to escape and got to refill and feel normal again. And he sees the TV and he goes looking through these holotapes they've got, which I love how the holotapes kind of look like 8-tracks.
Oh, that's a neat design.
They look more like Betamax.
Yeah.
I never had Betamax because, like, I know there was VHS and Betamax in the day. Did Betamax look like that? Like that shape?
Yeah, they were smaller than a VHS and thicker.
One of the reels revealed through the window, though, right? Was that Betamax that had that design?
Yeah.
But it reminded me of the ones my parents used for their old camcorder when I was a kid, too. That was kind of like in between the two. He sorts through and he finds one of his movies. The Man from Dead Horse? Is that the one?
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
Man from Dead Horse. Puts it in and sitting back and boom, it's the movie we saw him filming before. And he's in there delivering his lines. Feo fuerte y formal. And then I'm watching this. Okay, we saw this, but they cut the scene off. How's it end? And boom, he shoots the guy like he was told to, that he didn't do at the time of filming that we saw. But he went back, he did the shoots, he did shoot the guy, and it almost completes that cycle of this is who he's turning into.
I hope
Right.
you like
Well,
the
and
taste
called
of
him a
lead,
commie
you
bastard
commie son
or-
of a bitch.
It reminds you of the conversation with the producer from a couple episodes ago when they're talking about the anti-communism thing, or the director who was removed because he was a communist or whatever.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
And the fact that, yeah, you said, Will, you commie son of a bitch.
Yes, I hope you like the taste of lead, you commie son of a bitch.
See, you guys know that Cadillac Bob would not have written that line. That doesn't sound like Cadillac Bob at all.
Well, he is a communist.
But this is why I was thinking that he is a little more introspective, because he's seeing this video like that he did sort of try to have this stand against when he was a better person and didn't want to do that and didn't want to present himself that way. But then he just had this interaction with Lucy, who did show some compassion with him. And then he's watching this about, the feo fuerte y formal. I was thinking like he's thinking to himself, he's sort of lost his dignity too, maybe a little bit, in that she did learn a little bit from him, what he was doing. He maybe was learning something from her, realizing that.
I thought he was implying that all of that hitting the gym was paying off, that he wasn't ugly anymore.
Yeah.
I thought he was coked out of his mind and just reminiscing about the good old days.
Bingo. That's probably that one.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
we read too much into things. I don't know.
So my big issue with this scene
hmm
Uh-oh.
is that he reaches into the box and pulls out handfuls of drugs and puts them in his hat,
Yeah, his hat. hmm
instead of either taking the whole damn box and just carrying it off. It had a handle.
There's
Right.
so much there. Yeah, there's so much you could use. Like fill backpacks.
Or at the very least, dump it all into your saddlebag.
I agree 100%, Ray. I was thinking the same thing. But I'm also figuring at this point, he's barely functional. He just recovered from the ground and he just wants to get as much in him as he can and not really thinking at the moment. But he should have absolutely.
Are there any ferals alive in the building anymore?
No,
Not that
they're
we
all
see.
Got
dead.
them all.
They're all
Yeah.
dead. And would a feral attack a non?
Not usually. Just like if you get the
That's why
ghoulish.
you wear a ghoul mask.
Right. But
That's what I was thinking about in 3. You get the ghoul mask so they don't attack you.
one thing I was thinking about the other day is with the ghoulish perk in Fallout 4 as well. When you get to like level 3 on that perk, some ghouls will not attack you. Like you're starting to become more ghoulified yourself when you take the ghoulish perk. And not all ghouls attack, just like if you're wearing the ghoul mask. Some still do, but it varies. So no. I also like Snip too at the last scene before this happened when Lucy was leaving. He's like, "How can I help you have a better day?" That poor robot. I kind of hope Snip's okay. We need more in this show. We don't have enough of them.
Funny, we saw the actor who plays the voice of Snip earlier. In
Yeah, that's going to be in another
Pat.
episode. That's a good segue to the end of the show, actually. Although you mentioned, Andrew, Radiation Kings look like the worst TVs ever.
They're too like round. It's almost like you're watching a circle or something. Like I don't know.
Kind of like
Some of the
TVs
corners.
used to be.
Ray, how did you live?
It was these were very large cabinets,
Mhm.
almost like dresser sized, with just this tiny little tube.
With another TV on top of it that you actually watched.
That
And
was
some-
later.
No.
The most steampunk looking terminals in the Fallout games that have that completely round monitor. You start them
Right.
up and yeah, it's just a rectangle in the middle. You can play your grognak on that small little screen.
The good screen, right?
But this is when the show ends with him kind of fading in there. Next episodes are going to be called The Past, which is cool. And then we get the end credits on this one. And we haven't really talked about the last couple episodes. Every time
very good.
Yeah, the end credits seem to be based on the end of the last episode. It's thematic to whatever we saw this episode. And Ray mentioned a couple that he liked before. This one starts in a outdoor movie theater, which is perfect because Cooper's watching a movie. That's what I get it thematically, and it's starting to pull back. And you see skeletons in 3D glasses, and you see like popcorn with a guy with 3D. It's pulling out.
I like
you see
the
them
name
in
of
the
the
car.
popcorn is Americorn.
Americorn, so good. And it's pulling back, and then you get all the cars in the drive-through theater. And that's such a classic image in Fallout. I feel like every Fallout game has had a drive-in theater.
Yeah.
Drive-in theater.
We had Moonlight. We had the one in Far Harbor. Moonlight was in 3, right? We had the one in Far Harbor. 4, obviously, we had Starlight. I imagine the first game or 2 had them too, but I don't remember seeing an outdoor theater in Fallout 1. Anyway, it's just kind of a classic thing. So it keeps pulling back. Then you start to see buildings and bridges, and it's pulling farther. You see a half-destroyed vault. The thing to mention about these, though, is that they're always kind of abstract. It usually starts something specific, but whenever they do, they're very destroyed. They show the old world abandoned and the abstract here. And I think that's important because there are times when it shows things, people are like, wait, why is that all abandoned? And I think it's just kind of the art style they chose for this, that everything shows broken buildings and death. Like in none of these end scene pull out credit things, do they ever show a living person, do they? I don't think they do.
I haven't recalled one, no.
So I think that's just part of the aesthetic of them, which is kind of the aesthetic they're going for the whole show, showing everything very dead. Okay, so that's our episode. Like
Beautiful.
I said, one of my favorites. I loved the way we actually met various ghouls, both their humanity and lack of it in some cases. I like how we learned more about Cooper. I liked ass jerky. What stood out to any of you guys? Anything that stood out about this or any of the thoughts you had on the episode?
Pip Boys. How are
Yeah.
they different in the show versus the game?
So these Pip Boys in the show, they are Pip Boy 3000s. Like we have, so Fallout 3 and New Vegas and 4 all have 3000s, but we have a straight 3003. We have a 3000 Mark IV in Fallout 4, and this is a Pip Boy 3000 Mark 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Okay.
more advanced than we're used to then.
Yeah, we'll call it Pip Boy 3000 Mark 5. Anyway, it's a new variant that they had to get approved to make it a little bit more sleek. I believe that the producer said that they felt the Pip Boys were too busy, that they had the bright blue vault suits, like the bright blue and yellow and that color, but they wanted the Pip Boys to not distract, that they felt putting traditional Pip Boy colors or certainly like, donut sprinkles or Vault Tech colors, stuff like some of us have, it was distracting. They needed the vault suits to pop and the Pip Boys not to distract because they're pretty big. So that's why they've designed their own.
I heard some interview with her where she was talking about, I forgot, they even made a nickname for her that because she was always breaking stuff, and specifically she was breaking a lot of Pip Boys because she would drop them and they have iPhones inside of them. That's what they use for the screens, and she just kept breaking them.
So Lucy was breaking her Pip Boys?
Yeah.
Oh, that is funny. I remember hearing also that they had smartphones as screens, which is cool.
What functionality wise, what do they do in the show and games that is different? I feel like, I don't know.
Well, we know they
like,
have those little trackers that they can plan on people now too. That's not something we've seen in the game.
That's fun. Yeah, right.
We see people as quest objectives or things that can be tracked in the game, but it's usually done via frequencies.
Speaking of radio, I was thinking, can they tune to like Three Dog or whatever? I mean, an equivalent of DJ Travis.
Right.
Or
Well, we have the violin station later. They can tune into some transmissions with Pip Boy. We
that
know
is
they've
not
got
broadcast very far. I could guarantee you that.
we know they've got the radiation, the Geiger counter, although it operates differently, where they seem to actually have to focus it and turn it on and off more here.
Right. It
Around
does
the
seem like
water.
they turn it on to detect. Yeah.
Earlier in this episode, around the water, it was going off a lot, though. Yeah, what else? I mean, they can send messages back and forth. So, like,
Maps. Will they have maps of everywhere they go?
they
Like an
definitely
above-
have maps.
An above view map of. Does Lucy have a map of the Wasteland?
Lucy has a map of local area, and when she got the quest to take Wilzig to Moldaver, Mama June at the time was like, "Here, let me mark that on your map." Basically, she sent her the coordinates, and she put the coordinates in,
Awesome.
and you saw the
I
map.
don't think
at
I
that point.
noticed that.
So it has maps, but messages back and forth. Like when she's applying for the Triennial Exchange to get herself a hubs from over in Vault 32. She gets the little application approved or whatever on her Pip-Boy, so they can obviously message with Pip-Boys. And in a future episode, too, everybody gets a message on their Pip-Boy. So we never see that in games, that it's used for transmission back and forth, really.
Could she, like, text Norm?
Probably transmission distance is not that far,
Right.
especially through a vault.
Yeah, I would say it's probably
Just
pretty
through
hard
a
to get
lead
through the
wall.
walls.
Yeah,
The vault steel or lead? Both?
probably both. Probably other metals.
All right, that was my big question. I was curious about. Actually, it was just the radio stations. Like,
Yeah, so the real big difference, we don't see her have a quest log, but I mean, she could. Not that it automatically updates.
so that would appear just like a task list on my phone, like at work. You set up your task list, what you have to go, where you have to go to do your task. That's how a quest would.
Yeah, I'm almost surprised. I mean, I guess they still have time to do something like this, that they didn't put a radio DJ, like a real one, in the show. Like, kind of every now and then when they're skipping scenes, it would be like the DJ talking about what the
Coming through on the radio.
yeah, y'all heard. There's an actual vault person outside the vault now.
Tore the shit out of some BOS piece.
Yeah.
We see a couple radios here and there in the Wastelands. I think there was a radio with the BOS, but yeah, we only ever hear like music and stuff through them, really. I think with the way they're showing the Wasteland here in this area of LA, with it being so devastated, that there just isn't something like that at the moment until we get the violin station. And he does talk.
Yeah.
He does talk like a radio DJ, so we do get a hint of that in a future episode. But you're looking for a good one.
Like, because Travis and Three Dog and those guys are so just
Mr. New Vegas.
a part of the
Staple
game. Yeah,
characters.
and yeah, Mr. House or Mr. New Vegas, right?
DJ.
Julie in 76, having a DJ is iconic. And so they hint at it in a later episode, but yeah, we don't really get one like normal here.
The mids.
Definitely something they could do next series. Anything else on this one, you guys?
All good.
It's funny.
Okay.
This is sort of as the longest we've talked, and I think it is the shortest episode so far, wasn't it?
It was, but you know, we're a little more perky this time. I wanted to hit more than just the fact. Well, awesome, you guys. Thank you, Ray, Andrew, and Will, for joining us to discuss this episode. And thank you, dear listeners, for joining us as well. We really appreciate you tuning into Vault Talk for these recaps and discussions. This has been episode 4, The Ghouls. And next week, we'll be discussing episode 5, The Past, which we kind of tuned into. It's a great segue because you have Cooper drifting off in a drug haze into the past. Kind of perfect segue for the theme of next episode. As a reminder, you can listen to our regular show, The Fallout Feed, on podcast services everywhere, so tune into us there. And until next time, we'll see you in the California Wasteland.